So for those who don't already know this, while the Bitcoin blockchain may be immutable, unchangeable, the code base for the software that is Bitcoin is not. It does undergo more or less regular changes. And the way it works basically is developers come together with a proposal and the community sort of has some kind of rough consensus. People express their opinion on whether or not they want this change to go through. And then it's either put into the code or not. If it is, then everyone who runs a full node has the option to either choose to run that software with that update or not, or run a different version of the software altogether. And something's been happening the last week or so where there was what's called a pull request on GitHub, basically a suggestion to change something. And what it is, now I'm not a developer, okay? I don't know all the code, all the details, but I've spent a lot of time the last few days trying to figure this out and reading about it, watching videos about it. And I've concluded that the actual technical details are not super important. What it comes down to is this. They want to remove some filters in the blockchain that filter out spam, transactions that are not related to monetary data, and that's it. And a lot of people don't want that. The arguments for not removing those filters have been made and are very strong, in my opinion, make a lot of sense. The arguments for removing them are all over the place, don't really make any sense. And my first take on this was, why is this even being suggested in the first place? It would just likely lead to transaction fees being higher, lead to all kinds of arbitrary data being included in blocks, when we have chains like Ethereum and Solana and a bunch of other blockchains that are fine for that. They serve that purpose. You can do whatever you want there. Bitcoin is intended to be money. It's the dominant digital monetary network, and that's all it should do. That's my opinion, and that's shared by a whole bunch of other Bitcoiners all around the world. And that's why this has been such a contentious issue, is because somehow, for some strange reason, these Bitcoin Core developers, that's the primary development team that works on the Bitcoin software. There are other variations as well, but this has been, most nodes have run Bitcoin Core for a long time now. And it's funny, it just came out today that Peter Todd, a Bitcoin Core developer, admitted on Twitter that someone paid him to submit this pull request. And it seemed like a conspiracy for days where, people were speculating, well, somebody must have paid somebody to do this thing because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. And that is actually the case. So the real problem here seems to be that developers don't have enough funding, so they're just accepting money from whoever wants them to do whatever. And that's obviously a bad thing for a whole bunch of reasons. And apparently there's a company called Citria, I think is their name. I haven't looked into this part of it. I don't know who they are, what they do, but supposedly they're the ones who really want this to go through because they can then spam the blockchain, and I'm not even sure how that benefits them, but some people are saying we need to increase transactions by having more data in blocks because miners won't have enough of a incentive to keep mining and securing the network. I don't think that's true at all, because the block reward keeps going up in fiat terms, even though it goes down every 4 years in Bitcoin terms. And so that's plenty of incentive right there. Miners are doing just fine, and the system is self-correcting. So if miners don't have enough of an incentive, then the hash rate will drop, and then more miners will come online because it's more profitable, and it just goes, then hash rate goes up, and then miners go offline, and this is just what happens. It's feasible at some point in the future, like when there's no new coins to mine 115 years from now, then yes, transaction fees will be the only incentive to mine. But cross that bridge when we come to it, or ideally just a little bit before. We're nowhere near that point now. So the argument of we need to increase transaction fees to incentivize miners, completely nonsensical to me. And then that's the only like somewhat legitimate argument I've even heard. I can't find anything else that really seems to make sense. It's mostly just people calling each other mean names and words, and a GitHub thread got shut down because people were saying they didn't like this change, and there's really shady stuff happening. If you want to learn more, I recommend Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University YouTube channel and the Bitcoin Mechanic YouTube channel. They've put out really good videos on it. Bitcoin Mechanic has long form, detailed videos. Matthew Cratter has short form explainers. And there's some podcasts recently. And what else? Yeah, that's really it. I mean, people who have been around a long time and who really know this stuff on a deep level, for the most part, don't want this change. And like Adam Back, for example, who's cited in the Satoshi white paper for his work on Hashcash, he made an interesting comment saying, well, the argument against removing limits on OP return has been made. What are the arguments for it? Any responses, GitHubbers? Because he was saying that the conversation on GitHub didn't fully translate over to Twitter. The stuff that spilled over to Twitter didn't include those arguments, and no one responded to him. Because, in my opinion, there really is no good argument for that. It's just that someone who has their own motive basically bribed a core developer to submit this. And it was just announced, I think it was yesterday, that the request is going through. It's going to be included in the next version of Bitcoin Core. And they said something like, after a broad but maybe not unanimous consensus, we've decided to go through with this change, which is an absolute joke. It's gaslighting, psyop. There's no consensus whatsoever. Just the fact that there's a lot of arguing about that alone is proof that there's no consensus, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be such a big deal. So it really is not a good thing for some developers to just be able to go ahead and do whatever they want. The idea is that because Bitcoin's decentralized, everyone can run a node and everyone can choose to run their own version of the software, like I mentioned earlier. And for me personally, I'm going to run my node on the old version of Bitcoin Core. I'm not going to update to this new version, which I'm sure a lot of people will do. But what a lot of people are saying is to run Bitcoin Knots, Knots. I don't know what Knots is. I've never heard of it until this last week. So until I can do some due diligence on what that is and who's behind it, I'm not going to switch over to that just yet. Although it seems to be a popular option. I know I just saw a video yesterday, Bitcoin University, showing that the number of nodes running Knots has overtaken the number of nodes running a certain version of Bitcoin Core. I think maybe it's the latest version of Bitcoin Core. So there's already some pushback in that sense. But it's kind of disheartening, honestly, because if Bitcoin Core was so easily corrupted all of a sudden, then who's to say that the next version of the software isn't going to be corrupted in a similar way? What's going to happen? And what if nobody switches over? What if the majority of nodes just keep running the latest versions of Core no matter what, because they either don't know or don't care, or I don't know. But the takeaway here is to run your own node. You can do it on an old laptop. That's the cheapest method. You can buy a Raspberry Pi, a little computer about the size of a credit card. You can run it on there a few different ways. That's the next most expensive. And then the easiest, but also unfortunately most expensive way, is to buy a Start9 or an Umbrel Home, little home server, and you can run a node that way. The BTC Sessions YouTube channel has some good videos on how to set up and run your own node, but it definitely takes some research, and that's a bit of a barrier to a lot of people I know, because getting set up with something new like that can be a pain, although Umbrel and Start9 make it very easy. It's practically plug and play. You just plug things in and log in to the server in a web browser, and then you can download an app and just click play, basically. So a Raspberry Pi is a little more complicated, and doing it, I've never done it on an old laptop, but I assume that's not much more complicated than having an Umbrel or Start9 home server. So yeah, that's basically it. If you care about Bitcoin and you want to have a say in the network, you really have to run your own node. There's no other way. And while I don't have as big of a platform as so many other people in the space, I wanted to get my thoughts out here and make this video. I might make another video, maybe a Loom video showing some of the comments and threads and discussions on this topic, but I wanted to start with this one because I had this realization yesterday that all this deep technical debate is really secondary to the fact that people want Bitcoin to be just a monetary network, and there's no need for a change like this right now. There's no pressing problem or catastrophe, nothing that needs fixing. If it's not broke, it doesn't need to be fixed. And the point is, people can choose what they want, and there was no consensus on this. It seems like there's a vocal minority who wanted this change, and a whole lot of people who don't want it. But there's also, it's happened so fast, there's also a lot of prominent Bitcoiners that I haven't really heard their opinions much on this yet. Maybe, I'm sure they're busy, maybe they haven't had time to address it yet, but people like Max Kaiser, Mark Moss, Michael Saylor, I would be curious to hear what they had to say on the matter. The Bitcoin conference coming up in Vegas soon, I'm sure it'll be brought up there at some point, some discussion. I'm not going myself because I don't want to support that. Supposedly, they support the core developers. So one of the best ways to fight back against this change is first and foremost to run your own node and run a different version of the software, or don't update to the latest version of core at least, and don't support anything or anyone that supports Bitcoin core developers. Matthew Krater's talked about that, and I know one of the things he mentioned was the Bitcoin conference. I can't think of what other things there were at this time, but I'm not going. I wasn't planning on going anyway, but now I'm never going. I'm not going to follow them on social media, nothing, forget that. And yeah, I've been around this technology since relatively early days, like 2013, 2014. So even though, I'm not out there talking about it all that much, I don't get involved in these kind of things really. And I've only started making videos recently. I felt like it was important to, at least get my thoughts out there. And yeah, that's what I wanted to do with this video. And I'm sure it'll spark some debate, controversy. I know I made a LinkedIn post and got some people arguing there. There was some good debate, but it mostly devolved into just trolling people, saying things that didn't make sense, and then going back and forth. And that's when I realized there's no good debate to be had here. There's really no legitimate argument for why this thing should happen. Basically, what people have said is people can already spam the blockchain thanks to Taproot, previous upgrade, so we might as well remove the limits on the OP return too, so people can spam that way as well. But then they also say that the spam filters don't work, so just remove them. But if they don't work, why do you need to remove them? So it's a whole thing. I've gotten past worrying about the technical details. All I know is that I don't want that on my own node, and I'm positive that a good majority of people who have been in Bitcoin for a long period of time just want it to be for monetary transactions, and that's it. That's all we need, because there's other chains for all that other stuff. So with that, this is Brian Nibley. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found value in this video. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.